Hashtag free Wes Bergman, Sheldon. Free Wes. Let my people go.
Yeah, I mean, Wes is playing a very interesting game right now. That's for sure. A very interesting game being played by your boy, Wes, for sure.
The people's champion, Wes. Let's do some introductions, though. I'm John Chidley Hill.
And once again, I am Sheldon Alexander.
And this is You Killed It, the podcast about the challenge. Obviously, right now, it's sort of the off season. Champs versus Stars. The Champs versus Stars. I have to say, it's the most political season of Champs versus Stars that we've seen. Obviously, the big issue is that the blue team is only down to 3 stars: Wes, Tony, and Ashley. And Wes and Ashley are struggling with the fact that they're not in control of their own destinies.
They are struggling with that. And it's funny because in contrast to the other seasons of Champs versus Stars, this is a drastic change of pace, right? Because in past seasons, it's all been the champs just dominating everything, and the stars are kind of just along for the ride. Whereas in this instance, it's a complete opposite. And imagine how funny it would be for, let's say, Johnny Bananas sitting at home, tuning into this, and he's watching like Wes not being in control here. He's watching Tony, who just turned on him on the last season of the challenge, right? But just imagine like some other challenge vets at home watching this, and they're like, wow, you guys are really getting played by Drake Bell and Booby Gibson and Louise Hazel and Casper Smart. You know what I mean? Like, I can't wait to hear, I don't know, maybe those guys are tweeting. I don't know if Johnny Bananas and them are watching, but I'd love to just get their reaction to what's going on this season of Champs versus Stars.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I can't say that I've seen any tweets about this. The person who seems to be tweeting the most right now is Jemmy, but Jemmy she's been tweeting about other reality TV shows. She's been tweeting about like 16 and Me and the Kardashian drama with Tristan Thompson. So, although you know what, I believe maybe the radio silence is because I think many of the regular challenge people are filming right now. Like, I think they're on set, which means no phones.
Yes. Actually, I think they just finished, or they just got back.
That's
all I'll say, though. That's all I'll say, because I don't want to get myself in trouble. And remind me to tell you after we finish.
All right. I will remind you.
But getting back to this episode, though, I mean, yeah, we start off with Booby Gibson, who, coming into this season, I wasn't really sure what kind of performance we would see from Mr. Booby Gibson. But the one thing I did say, and if we go back to the very beginning of when we started talking about this season, I said one of the things they did in terms of casting this season of the stars in particular was they got people who are familiar with reality TV, right?
Yeah.
So Brooke Hogan's already done a reality show. Booby Gibson was already on a reality show. You know what I mean? And so in that instance, they kind of understand the ins and outs, the things that you need to move along a storyline, right? And
what's Jose's excuse then?
Well, I mean, he moves on storylines. I can give you that. He's entertaining.
That's true.
He's not good at the game, but in terms of being interesting or funny or, comedic, whether intentionally or not, right? I think he does a good job. But it was almost like it caught me off guard a little, right? Because the start of this episode is Booby Gibson kind of leading the charge, talking to Lil Mama, Salida, and Brooke, and he's trying to give them pointers in terms of, listen, you guys need to start really paying attention to what's going on here with the game, because it's getting serious right now. It's down to the nitty gritty, and Brooke Hogan, to her credit, admits that she was having a good time. She was here having fun and being friends with everyone and really enjoying everyone's company and all that. And now it is kind of time to start paying attention. Like, is it kind of funny to you, John, how the drastic difference between the blue team and the red team in terms of just how the Stars figured out this game?
It is. I think it's funny because, I mean, on both sides, the champs are playing the same game, or tried to play the same game at first, where they try to be like, no, 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 we're a team, we're a team, we're a team. And then, they just would try to maintain their numbers. Like, on the red team, Shane going in, knowing that he'd be voted back in after being eliminated by Tony. But yeah, the red team has just, I guess, done a better job of pulling the wool over the Stars' eyes.
Yeah.
I think there's two differences. I think that one is that Louise Hazel, although she is a star, she is actually a champ. Like, she's done this before, so she knows what she's dealing with. So she obviously has been very vocal, and arguably, I mean, people say Casper is the leader of the blue team, but I'm not sure of that.
No.
And as for the red team, I think that the difference is that CT is so charming and low key now that the Stars didn't see him or Devin as like a threat. Like, they didn't see the other side of them. So I think those two personalities have made all the difference, and you see how it's worked out on the two teams differently, where things got way more heated on the blue team, where the red team, aside from Lil Mama, they're getting along generally.
For sure, yeah. The red team was getting along until now. For the most part, they had little hiccups, right? Whether it was involving your boy Jose or Shane, who's always going to be a fire starter. Obviously, we'll get into it, but what happens with Kayla in this episode. But when you look at the blue team, though, it's not only the great gameplay that's going on from the Star side of it, but the three champs that are left, namely Ashley, yeah, they're having a bit of a go here because Ashley is calling out Wes. She actually calls him a little bitch because she thinks that the blue team is the Stars are playing Wes. And I want to get your take on this, John, because she's upset because she feels like they're on their own, and Wes is kind of trying to placate to the other Stars because he doesn't want to. He knows it's between him and Tony, and obviously, Ashley, from Ashley's point of view, she's by herself because she's the only girl left from the Stars from the champs on the blue team, and Tony is kind of not really playing the game as much as Wes. So Ashley's calling out Wes here and blaming Wes for kind of playing along too much. Does that make sense to you? Like, I didn't really understand that. How is she blaming Wes here? Am I missing something?
I'm with you. I don't think it's Wes's fault. I think he did everything he could. I think they've just been unlucky in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And that it just came down to pure numbers, right? Like, there's only so much Wes can do. Like, he couldn't flip anyone's votes from the Star side, which is really his only option.
Yeah.
There's just nothing to be done. They just got overpowered.
Also, too, the part that I don't understand is she's blaming Wes and saying Wes is like sucking up to the Stars on the team, but Wes is the one that had to go into the elimination, right? Like, it wasn't Tony.
Yeah.
Like, if Wes was doing such a good job of tricking them or trying to play along with them, wouldn't Tony have been the one that had to go into the elimination and not Wes? Like, that's the kind of the thing I didn't really understand. But again, we're talking about Ashley, who just been on kind of a rampage for the past few episodes, right? So maybe there's not much of a method to her madness, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, also, too, CT then sits down, and he's talking to Wes, and he says, Wes, all the time, he always thinks that he's in control, but it always seems to go the other way. What do you agree with CT in that instance? Obviously, I assume he's talking about other past seasons of the challenge, where Wes is always trying to be the mastermind, but things always seem to come apart. Do you agree with
Yeah,
CT?
I do agree with CT. I do. I thought it was a good point by CT because we have seen this. I feel like Wes's last appearance on a regular season of the challenge was Rivals
I have no
2,
idea.
maybe? No, or X's? I think it was X's. What was it where it was X's, where Johnny Bananas and I guess Nani came back from the shadow bracket. And like
Yeah.
Wes had thought he was running the house, and then as soon as Johnny Bananas showed up, it all flipped and he was done.
Yeah.
In any event, this has happened before to Wes. It happened on Fresh Meat 2,
Mm-hmm.
where it looked like he was running the house, and he kept sending Kenny and Laurel in, and
Yeah.
they kept eliminating one by one his allies until the house numbers evened out.
Shout out to Kenny and Laurel, by the way. Probably like my favorite team.
Oh, that's
One of my favorite teams in challenge history, for sure.
That's my favorite season of the challenge, and I know I've said this on the show before, but to me that's the start of like the modern challenge. Like if you're trying to get people in, send them to Fresh Meat 2, and then like everything else makes sense after that. Like every subsequent season makes sense. That's where you really get introduced to all the key players.
Yeah.
But in any event, and of course it was shot in Canada. Shout out to our home and native land.
Dun, dun, dun.
But yeah, I think CT's making a good point that this is sort of the way it goes for Wes. And I should also add, I was talking about this with a friend of the show, Nick Ashburn, last night, and Nick was making the point that both Bananas and Wes have very particular games, very particular strategies that they rely upon. And one of those strategies for Johnny Bananas is stay out of elimination at all costs. Right? Like,
Yep.
avoid it as best you can. And for Wes, it's always play the political game. Get people to do your dirty work for you. Right? Manipulate people so that you don't get your hands dirty so no one comes after you. Although, notably, Wes is way better in eliminations than Johnny Bananas. So he can hold out. He has at least that to fall back on, whereas Johnny does not so much. And I think it's sort of a situation of live by the sword, die by the sword for Wes. Although, again, this season, I don't think it's his fault. I just think the numbers were against him. They got some bad breaks. And, that was that. Like, I'm not saying that he'd be in a different position, but if he had different champs allies on his team, like Tony and Ashley are not the strongest allies right now because Tony is not really doing anything. Like, he's competing hard, but it's not getting him anywhere. And Ashley is obviously just like in her own zone, trying to sabotage games. Is not in a situation where she's thinking straight.
She even has a different shade of blue uniform.
Yeah, I keep noticing that. It bugs me so much.
But speaking of Wes trying to keep up his political game, as The Miz, who shout out to The Miz, because I really, again, think he's doing a good job as a host. I like The Miz as a host.
Yeah, I think he's done well. He brings the right amount of like fun, and like he asks good questions, and he's pretty sarcastic.
Yes, agreed. Totally agreed. But as The Miz is breaking down what's going to happen in the next competition, we find out that Wes has his arms tied behind his back, and he's asking Casper if he's able to speak. Meanwhile, the red team is just laughing at him. But what do you make of Wes sort of playing up this whole being held captive thing? Because to me, I think it's kind of funny. Like, it's good content for the show, and it's funny, but it's not really working, right? Like, the blue team knows that they can't really trust Wes, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. everyone's like, oh, Wes is just like towing the company line. Oh, what a bitch. But like, he's not really. Like, what's he done that's really helped them?
No, it's true. It's true.
Right?
He's just trying to say the right things. And I will say this though, John, and I'll pitch this, and I've been meaning to do this for a while now, and I keep forgetting each and every week. And then after we record, or not even like when I'm posting it later on, like on the On Blast site or whatever, I always remember. I'm like, damn, we should do like how we do a segment at the end of the show that is who our MVP is. We should also do another segment, which is our favorite quote from the episode.
Oh,
right. I was thinking about that, and I always seem to forget this, but I've been thinking about this for a while. So we'll back pocket that. We'll like I do have a quote for this week, but
all right,
we'll make it like a regular thing the following next week. Okay, we'll make it a regular thing the following week. But the reason I bring this up now is because as we're discussing just kind of like how things are breaking down for Wes, I feel that it's so funny to look at in comparison how things are breaking down for CT, who because we look at Wes and CT as kind of the honorary captains of both teams, let's say, right? Yeah. And CT and the girls, or CT and the Red Ladies, which I don't know. I think CT and the Red Ladies sounds better than CT and the girls, right? If we're coming up with the name.
Yeah.
Right? CT and the Red Ladies, pretty good. But CT's quote of, there's so much estrogen on this team right now, I feel my man boobs getting bigger. That would be my nominee for quote of the week. As a dude that suffers from man boobs himself, CT, I feel your pain. I hear you, CT. I hear you. But I just thought that was really funny because the way that CT, we're watching Wes kind of like, not lose it. I don't want to say lose it because I feel like he's in control with what he's doing, but it's kind of like we're watching Wes kind of scramble to remain in the game. CT is just like calm and cool, just like, yeah, he's got Lil Mama, Salida, Kayla, Brooke. Then you got Jose and Shane. It's just like a crazy crew of characters, no?
A lot of emotional people, and like
politically correct. I like that, John. Well said.
Thank you. CT. It's funny because CT used to be a very emotional person.
Yes.
Right. And I don't want to say that he's now insensitive because I don't think that's true, but he's not. He is not.
He has his
erratic
emotions in check.
His behaviors. Yeah. He's much more calm and pulled together and thoughtful now than he once was.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. So the next challenge is called Crossfire. And the way that this works...
You explain it, but I just wanted to say I really liked this. I liked this challenge, but go on.
At first, I was kind of like, how is this really going to work? And then as it went along and as they did it, I thought it was really good. But... So it's called Crossfire, and basically each team has 4 towers with a player suspended above each of the towers. Now, there's a wall in front of each tower, and what the rest of the team is doing, they have balls, and you have to use a slingshot to knock down, I want to call these dodgeballs, right? Because that's what those balls reminded me of, dodgeball when you were a kid, right?
Yeah.
In gym class. And basically you had to use a slingshot to knock down the towers, and as you knock down the towers, the player hanging above would fall down. The first team to knock down all 4 towers and all 4 players wins the challenge. Now, the thing that I found super interesting about this was each team figuring out the strategy as they went along. And what I mean by that is the people on the towers were able to figure out, okay, well, I can kind of hold this up, right? Instead of just like dangling there and not really being a part of it, I can like try to balance on top of it, or in Wes's case, he had his feet behind it. So anytime it was about to tip over, he could kind of balance it and keep it up. And then on the flip side, the other people who were using the slingshots, I thought they did a good job of figuring out, okay, so I think Louise and Salida weren't as good at using the slingshot, so they would just spend their time rounding up the balls and then giving them to Tony or Booby or CT, because they were really good at using the slingshots. I thought it was really cool to watch how both teams adjusted while this challenge was going along. What did you like about this challenge, John?
I did, like you said, I liked how it developed, how you could see them start to figure out strategy. Strategy really did make the difference here. I have to say, I didn't feel that they explained the game well. Like, I had the idea that they were trying to get their people down faster. Like, their own people down faster. Like, I didn't think they'd be shooting at each other. I thought they'd be shooting at their own team.
I got you. Yeah. I got you.
And, yeah, that they were trying to, get them down, and that there was, like, a momentum that you'd build. Because each one that you bring down, they could then start helping, like, pitching in.
I got you. Yeah.
But in any event, I did like seeing the strategy develop. I thought it was hilarious that Salida was like, I used to play with whatchamacallit?
A slingshot.
Thank you, with a slingshot. So, like, I'd be good at this, and she was not good at this.
But also, how do you compare a slingshot like this to a slingshot that I would assume she's talking about? Because the slingshot that most kids played with was like a handheld. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, those two things don't compare at all. Like the slingshots you have, like Bart Simpson's slingshot, right? Like,
yeah,
how do you compare those two things? I thought that was hilarious. But when she said that, I'm like, she's not going to be good at that. There's no way you had one of these contraptions in your backyard, right? Like, that's not a thing.
Well, but, and you saw it yourself. They had video of her trying to use the slingshot, and she wasn't strong enough to pull it back.
Yeah, she was struggling hard. The other thing that was funny that added to some of the red team struggles, I think they were struggling even before this competition began, because while the blue team, I guess because of the situation they're in with the number of stars versus champs, they kind of know how things are going to go, right? So Wes was joking around, just kind of being like, okay, whatever, put me wherever you want me to be. Ashley, they're going to try to put her in a position where she can't really hurt the team, even though she blatantly tried to throw it. But the reason I bring this up is the red team, they're having issues, and you started to see the cracks because, we start to hear from Lil Mama saying that she thinks Kayla's mentally weak. Salida was mad because she thinks that her team looks at her as being a weak player just overall. Like, there's so much drama going on there because the numbers are still somewhat even. It was funny to see.
It's funny to see, and also they all really underestimated off the hop, like, how it's all going to play out. Because they're like, yeah, we can put Ashley up there. She'll, like, that way she can't harm us. But she immediately, like, she did all she could to throw that game. And it almost worked.
Yeah.
Like, throwing the balls back to the red team, knocking over her own tower. Like, she tried.
If she was on, let's say that she was one of the people on the ground, maybe she would have spent the whole time just throwing balls back to the other side, right?
Yeah, that's
so it is
true.
super interesting in that sense. Like, I don't know, like, maybe that's a thing that would have happened. Who knows? Maybe the fact of having her tied up made it better. But, yeah, it was super interesting to see Ashley continuously try to throw it. It was interesting and annoying because I was like, this really seems kind of backwards, but sure, if that's what makes you work, Ashley, cool. Were you surprised at how well Jose and Drake were doing? They were the last two people that were up there for either team.
I mean, I was surprised. Like, I didn't think at first when Jose was doing that, I'm like, Jose, that's not going to help. And, like, because he was criticizing Kayla, being like, oh my God, she's doing nothing. Like, and then I was like, oh, this is actually working. Like, keeping your feet down actually makes a difference. And in like, realistically, that's probably the best use of Drake in Josiah. Like, I don't think that they're going to be like Tony, who is just firing howitzers.
Yes.
With his slingshot. So I think that it turned out to be the best role for both of them, and it made the difference for their team.
Definitely. And Jose ends up being the last one for the red team. And as we mentioned, Drake was the last one up there for the blue team. And you said it. Tony was just he was shooting shots and just hitting shots and firing shots and any other superlatives I could come up with to describe what Tony time was up to in this challenge. And Tony did a good job, finally hits Jose off, and the blue team gets another victory. And that led to another interesting deliberation for the red team because it seems like they've been in this situation for the past few weeks where basically their deliberation just ends up in a fight. But this time they seemed much more resided to let's all keep quiet, right? Like no one really
Yeah.
said anything when they tried to bring up who they were going to vote in, which I thought was super interesting.
I think that both sides knew who they were voting for, and like they weren't gonna say it, but there was no discussion to be had. Like
Yeah.
all the champs knew that they were gonna vote for Lil Mama, and Shane even says much in confessional. And then all the stars knew that they were voting for Kayla, so it was cut and dry.
Yes. So they were all super quiet. And then the blue team, they have their meeting, and Drake isn't even there. Drake was where, John?
I missed this. Where was he?
Drake was not at their deliberation meeting. Drake was at a rap concert.
Oh, well, naturally.
Now, my question to you is what rap concert do you think Drake was at?
Macklemore.
What about Drake?
I mean, that
Isn't
would
that
make
the obvious
sense.
answer?
That makes sense. And do you know what I like about both Drakes?
Okay.
They both came to fame as the stars of children's TV shows.
Interesting. Interesting.
So maybe they can commiserate over that.
Another possible concert that Drake could be at, Lil Dicky.
I mean, there's so many Lils out there
It's true.
in the world of rap that we could apply to make fun of Drake's size because he's not the largest human being,
Well,
despite all his steak eating.
yes, because this was out on the West Coast, though, I really hope that Drake was at a Nipsey Hussle show because I really enjoyed Nipsey Hussle's last album, and yeah, I just think that would be a great Instagram story for someone out there if they had Drake Bell at a Nipsey Hussle concert. But yeah, that's a story for another day. Anyways, so Tony is now getting upset because the rest of the blue team, or at least the stars, who, I mean, make up the majority of the blue team now, they want to put Drake as the MVP, but Tony feels that he should be MVP. Does Tony have a point?
Tony was 100% the MVP of that team. First of all, he got the kill shot. Second of all, like I said before, he was just rocketing those balls over. And, yes, Drake did play a role, and I'm not going to take away from that. But Tony definitely did way more. Tony was their best with the slingshot, in my opinion.
What do you make of him just being super upset and he's now trying to turn it on the rest of the team? Like, so I thought we were doing this based on competition, but obviously if we're not, just tell me that's the case. Just tell me that's the case. And he kind of sounded like, you know, the old Chris Rock bit when he's talking about the girl, how women always know that their man's cheating, but they want the confession.
Yeah.
He'll be like, it's okay. It'll be okay if you just tell me. And then you admit to it and it's not okay. That's kind of like what Tony was doing here, right? Because Tony, like, you know what's going on. Why do you need them to tell you what's going on?
Yeah, well, and this is something, I'm glad you brought this up, because it's something that bothers me in general. Like, why is Lil Mama so mad? Like, at this point, everyone knows what's going on. Champs are supporting champs, stars are supporting stars. So, just be okay with that. Like, when, and we'll get to the deliberation a little bit, but when Lil Mama started getting votes and she was like so mad, like why weren't any of the champs like, hey Lil Mama, I think you're great, but Kayla's my girl?
Yeah.
Like I thought it was funny that like Lil Mama was like, none of you are loyal, and all I could think was, they are being loyal. They're just not loyal to you, but they are being loyal to Kayla.
Yes,
Like,
exactly.
it's like, to continue to use your cheating analogy, it's like if someone is trying to get you to cheat and you don't, and they're like, "Oh, you're not loyal." Well, no, you are, just not like you're being loyal to your original relationship.
Hmm.
And I mean, we could talk about the deliberation a little bit further. It comes down to a tie between Lil Mama and Kayla, 4-4, and the tiebreak flips to Wes as the winner of the most recent elimination competition. And he's like, "What are you guys doing? You knew it'd be a 4-4 vote. You knew it'd come to me. And yet none of you offered me anything." Speaking to the stars.
Yeah.
He's like, "So, Lil Mama, you're going in." Like, he's being loyal to the champs. All the champs are being loyal. Like, everyone's being loyal right now, Lil Mama. That's
Yeah.
just, they're not loyal to you. You just gotta deal with that and not take it personally.
The other thing, too, not to jump too far ahead, but it definitely relates to what Wes was saying. And Wes is bringing up a really, really good point. So shouts to Wes for that. But to double down on that, you have to know that at some point, the game is going to change again, right? Like, it's not going to continue being red versus blue. Now, we found that out at the end of this episode. So maybe you might not have been anticipating it to happen this soon, but you had to know that at some point it was coming. So therefore, to further Wes's point, both sides should have been making sure that they knew what Wes was going to do in that situation. And we saw the conversation happen between Jose and Brooke when they're acknowledging, yes, this is going to come down to Wes. And Jose seemed so sure that Wes was going to be on their side, which, again, going back to things we've been talking about for weeks, I don't know what makes Jose so confident in his gameplay or people reading skills, but he seems to be reassuring Brooke that, yeah, we can trust Wes. We can trust Wes. And instead, the complete opposite happens. So the lesson here, should you listen to Jose?
No, definitely not. And this is my point. Like, everyone's like, "Oh, Wes is like, they have him by the balls. He's going to do whatever they tell him to do." He's not.
Yeah.
There's zero evidence that's what's going to happen. And, like, you know how he came out with the rope to show that he was tied up?
Yeah.
Where do you think that rope came from, Sheldon?
I don't know.
I assumed it came from projection.
Oh,
Rope
yes,
doesn't
obviously.
generally lie around. Right? Like, when was the last time you walked down the street and you saw just enough rope to tie your wrists? Like, it's not a thing that happens. And, like, they're obviously at a nice hotel in Los Angeles. It's not like he called up to room service. It's like, "Hey, you have any ropes to tie yourself with?" Although, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in an LA hotel you would. But in any event, like, it was obviously from production. And, like, it's obviously Wes. You were just saying how the producers did a good job of bringing on stars who would have experience being on reality TV.
Mhm.
It's just Wes being performative. Like, it's just Wes making it interesting.
Agreed.
So they were all so dumb to not think that it would come back to Wes and that Wes wouldn't stay loyal. I mean, what is Wes going to screw over CT, one of his legitimate friends in real life?
Yeah, like
No.
there'd be no reason. There'd also be no reason for Wes to do that.
Yeah,
Right?
there's
Like,
no
how does
payoff
it-
for him.
None at all. There's no gain for him at all to do that. Like, it was perfectly summing up everything I've been saying about Jose being just a terrible player at this game and at Big Brother. But it's so funny because, again, he was so confident. Again, I will remind people, in case you missed last week's episode or this is your first time tuning into us, and so you don't know what we've been saying about Jose before, but on Jose's season of Big Brother, he was walking around calling himself the messiah of the newbies, the messiah of the house, and the leader of an alliance that had maybe 12 people in it, something like so ridiculous. And obviously, after calling himself the messiah, he was voted out the following week. But it's just so funny to watch Jose in action because he's so off on all of his moves, all of his thoughts about like what other people are doing. It's just hilarious. It's funny. It's funny to me. But the other thing that I found super funny about this deliberation, John, and we can't miss this. So, first off, Kayla is shocked when she gets a vote, right?
Mm-hmm.
She seems so shocked and so angry. And you mentioned Lil Mama was kind of feeling the same way, but Lil Mama, this is still her first time playing this game. Kayla should have a better understanding of what's going on. She should understand that it's between her and Tori are going to get votes. It's going to be one of the two. And Tori seems to have a better relationship, or at least Tori's more like of the outgoing personality or playful personality. You know what I mean? So if you're choosing between the two, chances are the stars are going to pick you. So Kayla starts getting upset. Then we see Drake, who's really starting to pick up his gameplay. Drake sort of leans over as Kayla's getting mad that she's picked, and Lil Mama. First off, I think Lil Mama made the best call, right? Saying that if you're that shocked, you have a huge sense of entitlement. And I think that kind of sums up Kayla perfectly, no? In this instance. I'm not making a huge like character, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not trying to make a judgment of Kayla's whole entire character. I'm saying in this moment right now, if you were really that shocked, like what makes you feel that entitled that you should not have your name said in this particular instance? It was so weird. Even Drake was calling her out, right? And if Drake's shooting shots at you like that, if Drake is firing shade at you like that, something's wrong.
Yeah, exactly. It's, I mean, I've never understood on the challenge in general why people freak out when they get nominated. Like, it sucks, and I know it endangers your gameplay, but it happens. Like, you're gonna get nominated at one point or another,
for sure.
So you just gotta roll with it, as annoying as it is.
I mean, so having her name said is one thing, but I understand when she gets mad because Lil Mama says she's voting for Kayla because she folds under pressure. Physically, she's a better player than her, but mentally, she's a bum. The bench reacts on that. And sorry, I'm using a term as if people know what my stupid vocabulary means. Bench reacts is what we call when someone throws down a huge dunk. And then you cut to the bench, and the bench is going crazy. We call that bench reacts, short for reaction, obviously. But the cutaway shots, the reactions of the other contestants after Lil Mama calls Kayla a bum were maybe one of my favorite moments of this season to date. Because everyone was just kind of like, ooh, like that kind of that took a hard left turn out of nowhere.
Well,
no?
Drake did the classic, like, run away.
Yes, he did.
It's like when have you ever? You must have watched David Blaine's Street Magic,
yes,
where he will like do a like simple card trick, and like people will sprint away from him, like 400 or 500 meters. Yeah. I think I saw one once. I want to say it was Deion Sanders did Possibly. It, and. Like, he was gone. Like, they couldn't get him. Deion Sanders like ran like the 300 meters to his car and drove away. Like, he was done with the whole situation. Drake Bell pulled one of those, which I love.
Funny. It was good.
He's just gone.
It was so good. And the other thing too. Now, follow me here for a second, John. I love what Lil Mama did, right? But I think here that she's telling us what she was really doing. Like, I don't think she really believes that about Kayla, but in her confessional, she mentions that what the champs are so good at doing is that they'll mess with you. When they say that they're voting you in or putting you into the elimination, they'll add a little dig in there to really get in your head and mess with you. And I think that's really what Lil Mama was doing here. She says Kayla is weak mentally, and she's going to play upon that and throw in a little shade in there to throw Kayla off. And it definitely worked, right?
Oh, yeah. It rattled her cage.
So, as you said, it ends up being a tie. They tie it up. It goes to Wes. Wes ends up picking Lil Mama because he's a champ at heart, he says. And also, I think he's right to penalize them for not even trying to show any form of gameplay to discuss it with him right away, despite knowing that it's obviously going to go to him. But anyways, the blue team, Drake ends up getting MVP, and I didn't really think it was that far fetched, but either way, Ashley ends up going in. So it's Lil Mama versus Ashley. Except, as we found out last week, the MVP gets a power play. And for the second week in a row, the power play is override. Except we don't get to find out what the override is until the actual challenge. Now, to me, didn't that just make it even more obvious what the override was going to be?
Yeah. I thought that was pretty clear from the outset.
But with that said, though, John, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but I still liked it because it just added another layer of drama. Whether you see where it's going or not, it just added another twist. And I'm all for the twists because it just gives people more of an opportunity to mess up, right? Now, this was probably a really easy thing for Drake to not mess up, but he basically takes the takes the easy road, and we get to the final elimination, and he uses his override and decides that he is gonna put in Kayla, which is an obvious choice, right? Kayla probably should have been ready, right?
Yeah, she should have been ready. I have to tell you, I'm pretty over the power plays. Like, I'm tired of all this political gamesmanship being automatically undone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they're ruining their own game by, all these machinations happen. Like, what was the point of West being able to break that tie if it just automatically got undone again?
Yeah. No, it's true. You make a very good point there, John. And it's super interesting because at the end of the day, all this gameplay is unraveled again. And you're totally right, especially when it's a twist that you can see coming, right? And maybe somewhere down the line, like next week or the week after, the move is to have the same setup, but maybe the final twist will be something different, right? So like the same way that they were able to plot out, okay, well, if it's tied, we know whoever won the last elimination, they get to do the tiebreaker. So you follow like the same thing. So as we think that we know where it's going, boom, that override means something completely different, right? Like, I don't know what that could be. I don't know what it is, but I hope somewhere towards the end of the season that flips so that it's just not that easy to plot out and see where things are going. But, I mean, as we said, hey, Ashley versus Kayla, pretty solid challenge. I mean, I don't really know about the elimination, though. I thought it was interesting in concept.
It wasn't very cinematic.
No,
like,
exactly.
It didn't
It wasn't
really,
that entertaining.
No, and I get the sense it was over very fast.
It looked like it. Yeah, it did look like it. There wasn't much drama to it at all, really.
Yeah, I don't know. And I was... Like, I would have really liked to have seen Lil Mama versus Ashley. Like, that was a matchup that interested me. Whereas, like, I don't know, like, Ashley's very good at puzzles, so I thought it'd still be... I thought it'd still be competitive.
Mm-hmm.
But it's... I don't know. It's not the... In terms of just, like, pure entertainment, it's not the best outcome, I think.
Yeah, visually it wasn't that entertaining at all. The most entertaining part, I guess, was Kayla's level of saltiness. She ends up winning, and then she turns to her team and gives them the double middle finger, and then starts saying what she starts screaming after. Who folds under pressure? Now who folds under pressure? It's like, all right, yeah, cool. Yeah. Congratulations to Kayla. She gets to stay. I'm interested to see how things break down now, though, John, looking forward, because what did we find out at the very end?
That they are going to split into pairs.
Yes, and I can't wait to see how this is going to play out, because I think this is really where things get interesting, I think, right? Because I want to know how they're going to split into teams. Do they allow them to pick? Is there some random selection? Is it going to be, are you going to be partnered with a star? If you are a star, is it going to be a champ and a star? You know what I mean? So many questions, so many things I want to know, so many things that are keeping me interested in this season of Champs versus Stars. What about you?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm curious to see how it all plays out. I really want to know, and like can champs uh can champs start like picking each other to be partners? Like does it, and like will it break up along the red team blue team lines? Like can
Yeah,
CT and West be a partnership?
yeah, I
Um,
really don't know. Yeah.
is it? I guess it's even between men and women right now, but like I think I'd have to look at who's left, but I think there's more women now. So like, is there going to be a partnership that's two women? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
It's interesting, but it's certainly going to change like how this game's playing out. Like it's going to make a big difference, and I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
mhm. Agreed, agreed, agreed.
So let me ask you, Sheldon, who killed it for you this week?
I'm going a little bit off the board here, and I know it's going to sound a little weird, but I'm picking Booby Gibson. And the reason
Oh,
I'm picking Booby Gibson is because obviously the trifecta of Booby, uh, Louise Hazel, and Casper are really controlling things on the blue team. Add in another victory for the blue team, right? They win again, but also just the fact that Booby made sure to get the stars on the other side, on the red team involved. And this goes further to the point we were just talking about in terms of you had to know at some point that the game is going to change again, right?
yeah.
And so it's important to maintain relationships with people that are on the other team. And so him having that conversation at the start of the episode with Lil Mama, Salida, and Brooke, it was twofold. One, it was get them to focus in on what's going on in this particular episode, right? With the upcoming challenge, with the upcoming elimination, how are they going to use their votes? But also now go forward. He might end up being on their team. He might need a vote from them. He might need,
Yep.
it was just master manipulation, but not even, I don't even want to say manipulation because that's really not what it was. It was good leadership, let's say, right?
It was.
Because it's thinking, it's forward thinking, right? And things that we haven't really seen from the stars of this show on now, what, season 3? This is the third season of this, right? We haven't really seen this level of gameplay, let's say, from the star side of things. And yeah, I mean, the fact that his blue team keeps winning, as mentioned, his troops are calling all the shots, and now you're even calling shots for the other team as well. Booby Gibson also made an appearance, I think, at game 3 of the Cavs game, was sitting courtside or pretty close to courtside for, I think, game 3 in Cleveland of the Eastern Conference Finals between the Cavs, watching his former teammate, LeBron James, do some work.
That's right. I'll tell you who I think killed it. I think Wes killed it. And I'll
Okay.
tell you why. He
I'm
survived. He made it. He's been embattled. And he's, as we've been saying, he's been overcoming those numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Or trying to overcome those numbers. And yet, he's hung in there. Now it's a partnership. He does better in partnership type games, like Fresh Meat 1 and Fresh Meat 2. He might get to work with a champ, which is probably the best case scenario.
Yep.
He's still in there, thriving and surviving. And, obviously it's been a bumpy ride, but he did it. He's here. So, to me, Wes killed it.
Okay. Not mad at that. Not mad at that. I can't wait to see what happens next week, though. So we'll
Yeah,
see.
I'm looking forward to it as well. I'm really looking forward to it. You should tell the people where they can find you on the multimedia, the social platforms.
The interwebs, as I like to say. You can find me on Twitter at Shell Alexander and on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander.
And you can find me on Twitter at jchidleyhill. And I always say this cautiously. You can find me on Instagram also at jchidleyhill. But I'm not sure how thrilling My Instagram is to strangers, but hey, come check in on me, see what I'm up to. I feel I have strong Instagram story game.
Okay.
So maybe come check that out.
Okay. Fair enough. I will.
So until next week, this was You Killed It.
You killed